Unit 6, World Religions, Section 1, Hinduism. When and where did Hinduism begin? What are the Vedas? What language are they written in? What do the Hindu gods look like? How is the world created? What do they believe about reincarnation? And why is karma important to the Hindus? I'd also like you to go hit the internet and learn a little bit about some of these cool Hindu gods. All this stuff can be found on the internet. This reading is just kind of a jumping off point. The Hindu religion. Hindus believe in a cycle of birth, death, and rebirth governed by karma, the good and bad deeds a person performed in past lives. Many devas, gods, and devis, goddesses, are worshipped, with each person praying to the deity they find most useful. A farmer, for example, might pray to Shiva, lord of the beasts. These deities include Brahma, top left, Shiva, top right, Vishnu, center, Krishna, bottom left, and Rama, bottom right. Aryans invade. The Aryans came from the steppes, grassy plains of Central Asia. They invaded Persia and then pushed on to settle in the Indus Valley. Their religious texts, the Vedas, are the earliest basis of Hinduism, and the warlike gods they tell of reflect the Aryans' warrior culture. The earliest period of Aryan settlement in India is named after the Rig Veda, the holiest Vedic text. In this period, society was organized into small tribes called jana, each headed by a warrior chief, and Vedic civilization completely replaced the earlier culture of the Indus Valley. Farming the land. From 1000 to 500 BCE, the Vedic civilization spread across northern India to the fertile lands by the Ganges River. The nomads turned to farming, and the nature of their religion began to change. Priests came to dominate society, and rituals were introduced that controlled all aspects of people's lives. Class system. By 1000 BCE, a rigid class system had formed with 4 varanas, castes. Most important were the Brahmins, the priests, followed by the Kashtaras, warriors and nobles, the Vaishyas, farmers and merchants, and the Shudras, servants. Outside the system were social outcasts called untouchables. So this is kind of like lower class and middle class and upper class, except they were much stricter. You couldn't marry or work, or in the case of the untouchables, you actually could not touch people if they were in that specific caste. 5. Holy River. Hindus worshipped in temples, but also believed other places were sacred. The Ganges River is very important in the Hindu religion. Believers worship it as a goddess and bathe in it to cleanse themselves of sin. The Kumbh Mela festival, when millions go to bathe there, has its roots in Vedic legends. Sacred writing. The Vedas are the earliest Hindu text. The Hindus believed they were dictated to scribes by the gods. For many generations, the Vedas were passed down through Hindu families as stories. The most ancient Veda, the Rig Veda, dates back to 1200 BCE and contains 1,028 hymns. The epics. As well as the sacred Vedas, more tales are important to the Hindus. Between 500 and 100 BCE, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana are stories that praise the gods as central to human life and remind worshippers that good ultimately triumphs over evil. Sanskrit. The language of the Hindu religion, Sanskrit is one of the oldest languages in use today. It dates back to around 1500 BCE, and the Vedas were written in ancient form of the sacred script. Although Sanskrit is one of India's 23 official languages, it is no longer spoken. For each of these religions, I'm going to give you the religion's creation story. So according to each of the 5 religions we're going to talk about, this is how they believe the world or people or the universe started. This is not the first world, nor is it the first universe. There have been and will be many more worlds and universes than there are drops of water in the holy river Ganges. The universes are made by Lord Brahma, the creator, maintained by Lord Vishnu, the preserver, and destroyed by Lord Shiva. Since the universes must be destroyed before they can be created, Lord Shiva is called the Destroyer and Recreator. These three gods are all forms of Supreme One and part of the Supreme One. The Supreme One is behind and beyond all. After each old universe is destroyed, nothing is left but a vast ocean. Floating on this ocean, resting on a great snake Antana, is Lord Vishnu. Some say that a lotus flower springs from his navel, and from this comes Lord Brahma. And it is from Lord Brahma that all creation comes. How does Lord Brahma create? Some tell of how he grows lonely and splits himself into create male and female. Then he becomes one again, and human beings are created. In the same way, he creates all other living things, from the great animals to the tiniest insects. Others say that everything comes from different parts of Lord Brahma's body. All different animals and all other people come from his mouth, arms, thighs, and feet. Everything comes from one, Lord Brahma, who is part of the Supreme One, so everything is part of the Supreme One. For this universe, this world, and this Lord Brahma, like all those before and all those to come, will be destroyed by Lord Shiva. How long is the life of the universe? Its length is beyond imagination. One day to Lord Brahma is longer than 4,000 million of the years that we know. Every night when Lord Brahma sleeps, the world is destroyed. Every morning when he awakes, it is created again. When Lord Brahma of the universe has lived a lifetime of such days, the universe is completely destroyed by Lord Shiva. Everything disappears into the Supreme One. For an unimaginable period of time, chaos and water alone exist. Then once again, Lord Vishnu appears, floating on the vast ocean. From Lord Shiva comes the Lord Brahma of a new universe, and the cycle continues forever. The word Hindu comes from the river Indus, and it just means the people who live near the Indus River, actually in modern Pakistan. The Harappa people who lived near the river at about 2500 BC carved images of several different gods on their clay seals. We can't read Harappan writing, so we don't know what the Harappan people called their gods. But some of these gods look a lot like the later Hindu gods Shiva and Vishnu, so this may be the earliest part of Hinduism. About 1500 BC, when the Indo-Europeans invaded India, they brought with them their Indo-European sky gods. As the two cultures mixed and people in India began speaking Hindi, an Indo-European language, it seemed that their gods mixed too, so Hinduism got some new gods and some new ideas. The first written evidence of Hinduism that we can read is the Rig Veda, a long poem in Sanskrit probably composed around 1000 BC. People sang or recited the Rig Veda for hundreds of years before it was written down in around 300 BC. The Rig Veda is a bunch of hymns, songs for the gods, magic spells, and instructions for what to say when you are sacrificing animals. In all of these religions, most of your early versions were sang, recited, they were passed down orally, they were spoken, they were told to different people, so they would change over hundreds and hundreds of years before people finally decided to write it down. So the Rig Veda took about 700 years from when it was initially started to when someone actually wrote it down. It's going to be like this with all the religions we read about. The Rig Veda mentions many different gods, polytheism. Most of the gods are male, and many of them are sky gods or weather gods, like the god of rain, Indra, or like Varuna, the god of the sea. People sacrificed animals to their gods. The Rig Veda also tells us that people sometimes got in touch with the gods by talking to them. Both Soma and the fire of sacrifice, Agni, were thought of as gods themselves, too. About 600 BCE, the idea of reincarnation became more and more common among Hindus. Most people began to think that after you died, you would be reborn into another body. If you had been good and lived in accordance with Dharma, you would get a good body like a princess. If you had been bad, you would come back like a cockroach or a rat. Gradually, people began to hate the idea that you had to be endlessly reborn in different forms. They wanted to get free of the wheel of rebirth and just be left alone. People began to think that sacrificing animals was a burden on your karma or fate that prevented you from getting free of reincarnation. So animal sacrifice became less popular. Around 300 BC, people began to worship new gods who didn't need animal sacrifices. The new gods were Vishnu and Shiva. Generally, people gave Vishnu and Shiva flowers, incense, prayers, fruit, or music, but they didn't kill animals for them. They began to worship Vishnu and Shiva and paid less attention to their old gods, Indra and Varuna and others. One example when they're sacrificing fruit is the story of how Ganesh cursed the moon. Much later, between 400 and 650 AD, at the end of the Gupta period, another new god came into Hinduism. The new god was a mother goddess. Cows were sacred to this mother goddess, and so Hindus gradually stopped eating beef. Like Vishnu and Shiva, the mother goddess had many incarnations and many names. Parvati, Uma, and Anupunura were beautiful goddesses who brought blessings to people, but other incarnations were called Kali, Chandi, Durga, and Kamunda. And these goddesses were terrible giants with black skin, red tongues that stick out, and fierce tusks. They had many arms, and each arm held a weapon, and they wore a necklace of skulls or human heads. Holy books. The Vedas are the oldest religious texts in Hinduism. The word Veda means knowledge. It is believed that the Vedas were orally revealed to Brahma, to certain sages, who heard them and passed them down in an oral tradition. They were not written down. In fact, this was prohibited. Because of the earliest oral tradition continuing even now when the Vedas are available in written form, the Vedas are still known to be Shruti, that which is heard. The Vedas are mainly comprised of hymns or mantras written in the Sanskrit language. They cover various subjects, from nature to everyday life and behavior, from the basis of all other religious writings. The books are so special that they are often kept in glass cases. Basic Hindu beliefs. Hindus believe in an eternal spiritual path called Brahma, from whom all existence comes. The purpose of life is to understand this truth and to understand one's eternal identity as the Atma, or soul. The soul passes through many kinds of life, but only human life offers the chance of learning the truth. Therefore, Hindus believe it is important to use the opportunity a human birth to understand who oneself and God. Reincarnation. Reincarnation is belief that the soul is eternal and lives many lifetimes in one body after another. The soul is sometimes born in a human body, sometimes in an animal body, and sometimes in a plant body, such as that of a tree. All forms of life contain a soul, and all souls have the chance to experience life in different forms. The cycle of rebirth is called samsara, and under the influence of karma, the soul moves upwards and downwards on the wheel of rebirth. Hinduism teaches that the ultimate solution to life's basic problems is to be released from karma and gain freedom from this cycle of rebirth. Karma is the Sanskrit word for action. Actions are important because they bring reactions. Hindus believe every experience, pleasant or unpleasant, is linked to past actions in this lifetime or in some previous lifetime. This does not rule out free choice, because by practicing yoga or spiritual discipline, one can change one's actions and so change one's future. Belief in karma teaches people to accept responsibility for their behavior and learn from their mistakes.